October 1943. Two men who once wore Hugo Boss, tailored SS uniforms now tore raw ostrich meat with their teeth. Dr. Erich Bruckner, virologist. Colonel Hans Metzger, rocket engineer. Their research at Dachau had earned them a death sentence from both allies and fleeing Nazi high command. Namibia was their last gamble, but the desert had its own price. The Herero people, still bleeding from Germany's 1904 genocide against them, offered food for Metzger's wedding ring. "Take it," he hissed, "but if you betray us, I buried typhus vials upstream." A lie, but the Herero didn't know that. A smuggled Wehrmacht transceiver gathered dust. Every broadcast was a trap, the Allies hunting war criminals, the Nazis silencing loose ends. Only once did Bruckner risk it and heard his own name listed among traitors to be hanged. A young geologist, Dieter, joined him in March 1944 until he found Metzger's diary detailing prisoner experiments. While their husbands baked under African sun, Lotte Bruckner and Ingrid Metzger walked a tighter rope. The Gestapo's widow surveillance program watched their every move. One mismatched ration coupon, one wrong side during Hitler's speeches, and Ravensbrück's ovens waited. Every Thursday, Lotte left empty bottles in a specific pattern. The milkman, a Polish forced laborer, swapped them with messages from a resistance cell. One note read, "Your husband's typhus work killed my sister. Help us or I'll burn you both." She helped. When the SS demanded Ingrid's wedding portrait for a manhunt bulletin, she slashed her face from the photo. Shrapnel, she claimed. The officer broke her wrist, but the altered image saved Hans when a South African patrol stopped him months later. May 1945. Ingrid crouched in a radio hut as static crackled. The Führer's dead. Across the world, Hans wept in his cave. Lotte, however, grabbed the microphone and did the unthinkable. She denounced her own husband to Allied forces. Not for justice, but because she'd fallen in love with the milkman. Bruckner swore they'd been coerced. Metzger claimed ignorance. But when interrogators played Ingrid's confession tape, her voice detailing the exact shade of blue in the children's lab uniforms, Metzger lunged for the news himself. Only then did Lotte's final letter arrive, with a postscript that still chills historians. "The desert bones aren't Dieter's. We switched them in 45. Keep digging." The desert wind howls through the abandoned mine shaft where two men once hid from the world and from themselves. Dr. Erich Bruckner and Colonel Hans Metzger, names that once struck fear into Allied intelligence files. But what really happened in those secret laboratories back in Germany? The truth lies buried under layers of burned documents and conflicting testimonies. Some archives claim they were unwilling participants, brilliant minds forced to work on Hitler's deadly V-2 rocket program under threat of execution. Their signatures appear on documents from Piedmont, but are those really their handwriting? Forensic analysis shows curious inconsistencies, the B in Bruckner's signature too perfect, the ink chemistry wrong for 1942. Were these documents forged, and if so, by whom? And what of the darker rumors? The whispered accounts from surviving prisoners at Middelbadura about a doctor with shaking hands who sabotaged experiments, about an engineer who deliberately miscalculated trajectories to make rockets fall harmlessly? The truth may lie in Metzger's personal journal, discovered in 1989, but mysteriously redacted pages 14 through 29, torn out with surgical precision. If you had been there, standing in that lab with a gun to your head and the fate of thousands in your calculations, would your hand have steadied or shaken? While their husbands disappeared into the African wastes, Lotte Bruckner and Ingrid Metzger walked a razor's edge through the ruins of Berlin. The Gestapo watched their every move. One wrong word at the market, one suspicious glance during an air raid, and the consequences would be unthinkable. But what did they truly know? Lotte's diary, that precious, dangerous book hidden in the false bottom of her flower bin, contains cryptic entries. E showed me the blueprints today. God forgive us all. Blueprints for what? Weapons? Or perhaps escape routes for prisoners? The ink is smudged by tears or by deliberate obscurement. And Ingrid, oh Ingrid. Her story takes the darkest turn. That fateful afternoon when SS officers came searching for evidence, the way her hands didn't shake as she served them tea. The way little Klaus played quietly in the corner with his toy soldiers, the same soldiers later found to contain microfilm of concentration camp locations. A coincidence? Or the most dangerous game of all? When the knock finally came at your door, the uniforms demanding answers, would your love have been stronger than your conscience? Or would you have done what Lotte did on that cold April morning when the birds sang too cheerfully and the pistol felt so light in her hand? The desert preserves its secrets well. The shifting sands bury deeper truths. But sometimes the wind changes direction. Sometimes a scrap of paper surfaces after 70 years. And sometimes, just sometimes, a dying woman's confession doesn't match the official records. Next time we go deeper into the shadows, because the most dangerous lies aren't the ones we tell the world, but the ones we tell ourselves in the mirror each morning. The Namibian sun beat down like the eye of an angry god as Metzger and Bruckner dragged their riding boots through the dunes. October 1943. Two men who once dined on venison in SS officers' clubs now fought over a half-rotten jackal carcass. But was this punishment or privilege? Their home was an abandoned diamond mining shaft, 140 feet deep, its timber supports groaning like dying men. At night, scorpions fell from the ceiling into their makeshift beds. By day, they rationed sips of brackish water from a seepage hole water that left bloody sores on their tongues. But these agonies paled against their greatest fear, discovery. Metzger's journal entry for November 7, 1943 reads, "Today we heard aircraft engines. He wanted to run toward them waving a white flag. I reminded him what they did to Eichmann's men in Tunisia last month tied to jeeps and dragged through cactus fields. We stay hidden." Their survival depended on people they had once considered undermentioned. The Herero tribesmen whose grandparents Germany had massacred in 1904 now held these two Nazis' lives in their calloused hands. Tribal elder, Nerib's price? Not money, not weapons, but this: teach my son to read your maps so we may reclaim our stolen lands. Bruckner complied, but secretly altered coordinates to useless desert sites. When Nerib's son disappeared searching one such location, the scientists claimed jackals. The tribe's silent stares thereafter spoke louder than any accusation. January 1945. A battered newspaper blown into their camp carried photos of Auschwitz's liberation. Metzger's hand shook so badly he couldn't light his pipe. That night's journal entry, "We helped build this hell. Does surviving make us witnesses or accomplices?" The page shows water stains, sweat, or tears. The next morning, they burned their remaining lab notes. Or so they claimed. If your survival required looking away from unimaginable suffering, could you meet your own eyes in the mirror each morning? While their husbands baked under African skies, Lotte and Ingrid navigated a different kind of wilderness, the smoking ruins of Berlin, where every glance carried lethal consequences. Their weapons weren't guns, but lipstick-stained ration cards and carefully rehearsed hysterics. Lotte's salvation came from an unlikely source: Warsaw ghetto survivor Miriam Rosenbaum, posing as a milkmaid. Every Tuesday, among the empty bottles, they exchanged more than currency. Coded messages hidden in hollowed-out rye loaves, morphine vials sewn into cheesecloth. Once, a Star of David torn from a child's coat smuggled out of Treblinka. But the cost? For every Jew Miriam helped escape, Lotte provided fake medical certificates declaring SS men unfit for Eastern Front duty. These very men might later oversee massacres. A devil's bargain scrawled in Lotte's diary: "Today I saved Rachel. Tomorrow, how many will Carl kill with my help?" Ingrid played a more dangerous game. When Major Bauer of the Gestapo began checking on her weekly, she didn't resist his advances. Instead, she leaned in, literally. That perfume behind his ear? A slow-acting neurotoxin stolen from Bruckner's old lab. Within months, Bauer's hand shook too badly to sign execution orders. But Ingrid's payment came due when he whispered drunkenly, "Your Hans lab assistant talked before we peeled his skin off." April 1945. With Soviet artillery shaking Berlin, Lottie made her choice. She handed the resistance not just her husband's hideout coordinates, but the names of 7 other Nazi scientists in hiding. Why? Her interrogator later asked. Her recorded response still chills. When civilization collapses around you, do you cling to your humanity or become something else entirely? And when the war ends, can you ever go back? February 1945. Hidden beneath floorboards in a ruined Berlin bakery, this single sheet of paper survived the bombs. The handwriting is unmistakably Lotte Bruckner's, but the words belong to a woman pushed beyond breaking. Let me read it to you exactly as it was found, stains and all. Dearest Miriam, if this reaches you, I have failed. Tell the Americans to search the Namibian Terrorist Mountains at coordinates 24 degrees 34 minutes 12 seconds south, 15 degrees 57 minutes 18 seconds east. The cave entrance is behind a false rockfall marked with 3 red stripes. Inside, you'll find 2 men who deserve worse than death. But Lotte, I cannot do it myself. Not because I still love him, but because when I close my eyes, I still see the children's faces from his lab photos. If I sign their death warrant, do I become him? Burn this. Pray for me. And this letter never reached Miriam. We know because he edges her sin, someone stopped it mid-burn. But who? The milkman who found Lotte unconscious that night claimed SS officers had come asking about traitorous wives. Yet declassified Stasi files reveal a darker possibility. Ingrid Metzger intercepted it. Not out of loyalty, but because she'd made her own deal with the devil. While Lotte wrestled with her conscience, Ingrid took action. On March 3, 1945, she walked into a Swiss Red Cross office and handed them this. A 27-page confession detailing not just her husband's location, but the names of every scientist who'd escaped through Ratlins to Argentina. The price for this betrayal? Immunity. And one more thing, a new identity for the Herero guide who'd saved Hans' life, because she promised him something impossible. The guide, Narib, didn't want money or land. He wanted his son back, the boy who'd vanished chasing Bruckner's false coordinates. Ingrid swore she knew where the bones were buried. But when Allied forces finally reached that desert grave in 1946, the skeleton wore a German uniform. The real horror? Dental records matched a missing SS officer, one who'd overseen Herero concentration camps in 1905, a ghost from Namibia's first genocide. When the war ended, who truly betrayed whom? Pause here. Look at your own hands. Could they have signed that letter? Dug that grave? Walked away? Hans Metzger took this secret to his grave, literally. When South African forces finally stormed the cave in September 1945, they found Bruckner raving with typhoid and Metzger's corpse curled around a rusted tin box. Inside, not gold, not blueprints, but 73 teeth wrapped in concentration camp uniforms. Human teeth, each one marked with a number and a tiny etched star. Forensic anthropologists confirmed it in 2007. These were trophies from Bruckner's dental research at Dachau. But the real shock? 3 teeth showed drill marks forming Hebrew letters, not numbers, letters, spelling teshuva, the Jewish concept of repentance. Was this a victim's final act of defiance, or proof that even in hell some scientists wrestled with their souls? At Nuremberg, Lotte was asked why she ultimately didn't send that letter. Her answer still divides historians, because monsters should face their mirrors, not their executioners. As for Ingrid, she disappeared into Buenos Aires with Narib's son, a boy who grew up to lead Namibia's independence movement. The ultimate irony, his name was Hans, too. The war ended. The world moved on. But in quiet rooms across 3 continents, the reckoning was just beginning, a reckoning not with tribunals and firing squads, but with mirrors and midnight whispers. Let me take you through the doors history tried to lock forever. July 1946. A C-54 Skymaster carrying paperclip priority cargo taxied at Wright Field. Inside, Eric Bruckner, now Dr. Edward Blake, signed a contract worth $25,000 yearly. His first project? Perfecting aerosolized anthrax. The irony, He used the exact same lab equipment the Allies had bombed in Darmstadt, shipped piece by piece to Ohio. But Hans Metzger? Oh, his path took a darker turn. Recruited by Smersh in 47, he vanished into the Gulag system, not as prisoner but as warden. Prisoner logs from Workuta show his distinctive signature approving unusual medical trials. The same ink, the same flourish as those 1943 Dachau reports. Only now the subjects wore red stars instead of yellow. The ultimate betrayal came in 53. Metzger defected back to the Americans, bringing blueprints for Soviet nerve gas. His price? Immunity and a photo. Just one photo of Ingrid. When shown her Buenos Aires address, he laughed for 3 minutes straight. Because that apartment? It belonged to an SS butcher she poisoned in 44. Poetic justice or hell's own joke? Asterisk. Lade Bruckner never saw Eric again. Not when he testified at her 48 denazification trial. Not when she scrubbed floors at a Munich hospital for 15 years. Only in 1972, when a Time magazine profile showed him golfing in Florida, did she break her silence, mailing the editor a single page from his Dachau notebook. It contained children's heights and weights, beside dosage calculations. The magazine never printed it. Asterisk. As for Ingrid, she died the way she lived, playing chess with the devil. When Mossad agents cornered her in 61, she didn't beg. She offered names, 17 former SS men in Syria. The price? A vial of something Hans had left her. The label read glucosilidate, bliss. The Mossad doctor who analyzed it still won't speak about it, but his hands shake when pouring coffee. In 2018, historian Annika Metzger made a discovery in the Stasi archives, a film reel showing her grandfather Hans demonstrating interrogation techniques. On the prisoner, Neriv's real son. The date? 2 days after the boy supposedly disappeared. The method? The exact same dental nerve experiment Eric had pioneered. The film ends abruptly when young Annika starts screaming. She published everything. The universities revoked the family name. The medical journals retracted 83 studies. And the Pentagon? They quietly scrubbed Dr. Blake's formulas from their databases. Too late for Vietnam. Too late for Fallujah. But not too late for the truth. Redemption implies forgiveness. Justice demands accountability. But history? History only asks one question. What will you do with the knowing? These people, these broken, brilliant, monstrous people they got there after. The wives grew old. The scientists died rich. The children bore the weight. And you who have followed their trail through deserts and archives in the darkest corners of the human heart, you must decide, was this a tragedy, a farce, or simply the way of the world? The records are sealed now, but the desert wind still carries whispers from that cave. Listen closely next time you stand alone at night. You might hear the most terrible question of all. What would you have done? 2 years in the desert. 2 years in the shadows. This was never just a story of survival. It was a testament to the unbreakable will to live. Against thirst. Against madness. Against the crushing weight of their own past. The sands have erased their footprints now. But the choices they made, to endure, to adapt, to face each scorching day, these remain. Not as judgments, but as echoes of the most ancient human truth. Where there is life, there is hope. Even in hell, they found beauty. Even in exile, they clung to humanity. That is the real story. If this journey moved you, if you believe every survival story deserves to be told, hit like to honor their struggle. Subscribe to join us as we uncover more incredible tales of human resilience, because somewhere right now, another impossible survival story is waiting, and you'll want to bear witness.